So first it was aliens, right? And then this dude, without any memory at all whatsoever, just decides to go out into space. You're talking about my number one greatest all-time fear. Just nothingness in black. Hello and welcome back to the couch. We saved you a seat. My name is Luke and we are doing a chapter by chapter review and reaction of Project Hail Mary. Trailer came out a couple of weeks ago, decided to pick up the book, and it's been a fantastic time. We're on chapter 7 right now and we're just gonna jump into it because it's getting dicey. This was a little bit of a shorter chapter, but a lot happened. Actually, like a lot. Let's go into it. So let's begin. Ryland begins to freak out. Like, can you blame him? You know what I mean? Like, he is a scientist who gets to make the most influential discovery in the course of human history. Spends all his time looking back, right? Looking at studies that have already been done, everything. And now he gets to do something no other human that we know about gets to do. Fantastic. Anyway, so he switches the panel after noticing that it's another ship to a radar, and the proximity, like a regular radar, and the proximity alert comes on for the ship, and he's like, it starts getting pretty loud and blah blah blah, and he turns it off, and the ship starts calling this thing Blippy A. So Blippy A has now is now like 217 meters from the spaceship, which is about 2 football fields within zones, give or take. And after more math, Ryland, because he can see the ship through the scopes, Ryland figures out that the ship's about 3 times as large as the shuttle that he's on. According to Ryland, the ship is geometric and kind of strange looking, and he thinks that it might be a probe. Contemplates how an alien ship could notice the Hail Mary, but he assumes that because because they have the same drives, that they were both using IR scans, and he makes a reference to, ships in East Asia versus ships in Western Europe, and how when they were like, oh, we both have sails, how ironic. This is how we move around, which I thought was a really interesting point. I'm going to show the vessel here, what it looks like in the movie. It doesn't necessarily look like that in a book in my mind's eye. In my mind's eye, it's a little bit more elementary. This is very artistic, but it's very, very cool. So Ryland's trying to figure out how he's going to be able to communicate with this alien, right? Because it showed up and it's only 2 football fields away. So he's looking for a radio and he does a few other things, but he finally is like, I need to be able to maneuver the ship. And so he goes through the process of getting control of the ship, which is, in his own mind, kind of dangerous, because this is a very powerful piece of tool. It's a very powerful ship. It's very powerful. So if he screws this up a little bit, he could just rip the ship in half, like, easily, right? He even mentions that if he put up to full power, full Newtonian power, that it's 60 times the speed of a plane taking off, right? We've all been in planes. It's like being on a roller coaster. It's wild. It's fun. But yeah. So he turns on one engine and he does 0.01% power for 1 second, which moves him about 8.5 centimeters. And then the alien ship copies him. And so he does it a few more times. He does a long burn and then a short burn, and the other ship copies him. Pretty interesting. I like the way they're communicating here. It's like, I can do you, you can do me. We're on the same trajectory here, right? You're amongst friends. You know what I mean? You could argue that it's similar to like mimicry done from Predator and Prey, but I don't, even at this point reading, I didn't get the sense that was the case. If they wanted to destroy that ship, they could have just done it, and we have no idea what's on this ship. It could be anything, but it is determined that because of the reaction of the ship versus what Ryland's done, that had to be a person on the ship. There's a zero chance a signal could come from outside source, another planet, another probe, another ship to that what would be probe and move it. So Ryland's like, I am 2 football fields away from an alien. This is crazy. So when he comes to this realization, he is like gleeful and then anxious and then gleeful again. You know, he's the first one overall. He's the one. So then Ryland then notices through the scope that the other ship begins to kind of move, and what do you call it? A cylinder pops out, and one of the arms on the ship moves it across and releases it to the Hail Mary, which I thought was pretty interesting. And the ship that was releasing it released it at 8.6 centimeters per second, which is the exact same velocity as the Hail Mary was going when he was moving that ship. So there's some friendly, very much like, oh, we get it. You know, it reminds me of, because I used to spend a lot of time in bars, and sometimes you'd meet like random dudes and you'd have a conversation, and then somebody else would come up, and then you and that random dude that you're having a conversation with, you guys just suddenly jive, and you just have a way of communicating that you're just both on the same level because you maybe just like the same beer, and then everything kind of clicks together. It kind of reminds me of that. It's like, oh, this is how we're gonna communicate with math and movement, because we can't communicate vocally. It's all nonverbal communication, which is dope. This is very cool. I like the way this is like handling out. Okay, so what do we got? Oh, and then the ship recognizes that there's. What's cool is that the Hail Mary calls the alien ship Blip A. And then when it releases this canister, this cylinder, it calls it Blip B, and it tracks it, which is very cool. So the ship is really, really smart in some ways, and in some ways it is dumb as hell. Right? It's just stupid. So that's when the where am I at? Oh yeah. So then they match the speed. They're measuring the distance between the cylinder and the Hail Mary, and it's floating at such a speed that it would take about 40 minutes for the cylinder to get to the Hail Mary. And so what does Ryland do? He realizes he's going to have to go out and get into an EVA suit. This is my personal nightmare. This is above dry. I've been on stage in front of thousands of people, actually. Not scared of that. My personal nightmare is being in a suit and then just drifting off into space. Talk about horrifying. Anywho, so he decides he's gonna have to go outside, and when he thinks about the airlock, he thinks about his former crew members, and he has a moment where he tears up. And there's a couple of times, there's actually 3 or 4 times in this chapter that he's reaping the consequences of zero gravity. 2 of the times is with water because he starts sweating and the liquid just billows up on his head. This time he starts crying and it just covers up his vision and he can't see, so he has to like wipe it off and fling it across the room. And he puts on the EVA suit. He realizes he knows how to do all this stuff, but he doesn't really know that how he knows. It's kind of like the Matrix, which I think is a pretty dope moment. And he uses the EVA suit and a lot of the stuff to maneuver across the hull. Now, this is a Russian EVA suit, so it's all one piece. It's all one mechanism. And he notes also that if he was in an American one, he would have some sort of thrust control. But with this one, it's really just a suit. And he has to kind of like latch himself to the ship and maneuver around the ship through latches and pulleys. Super interesting. One thing he does also notice is that there's like a 2-foot ring, he says, around the living quarters, I think. Did I say that? Is that right? Probably. Correct me if I'm wrong. But he says there's a 2-foot ring that he has to kind of hop over. I wonder if that has to do with gravity control, like without having the engines on, and he just doesn't know it yet. Because he mentioned the lack of gravity twice, 3 times, and I imagine him just floating around inside the ship is going to be detrimental to his success moving into the rest of the book, because we're only on like page 130, 135 at this point, and there's 450 pages. So I imagine that's the case. He mentions it. That's going to come back through. I think he says it's 2 feet. and that it's kind of massive, and he thought that was kind of weird, had no idea why that was there. Anyway, he positions himself in front of the cylinder. He just sits there and waits for it, and he catches it. He lets it go into his arms, and he works his way back onto the ship. And now here is where for me, like I said, that kind of thing scares the absolute bejesus out of me. Absolutely no way. I understand, like, he's communicating with alien life and you got to do it, and I would just be freaked out. Listen, there are 2 times in my life where I was so freaked out that I thought I wasn't gonna make it. One, and they both happened in the last 5 years. One, I forgot that I was afraid of heights, and I went and ran across the Golden Gate Bridge. I was in San Francisco, and I used to run a lot, and I was like, it's like 12 miles to get across and back from where I was staying. And I get on the Golden Gate Bridge, and I'm just going, I'm like, okay, this is pretty cool. And then the chain link fence ends, and it's just you on a path that's, maybe a little bit wider than this desk, so 6 or 7 feet wide, and people are zooming past you on bicycles. And the railing, I'm 6'3", the railing was lower than my waist. And so all I could think about was, if I trip and fall, I'm in the water. I might die. Like, my vertigo was going so bad. Other time, I was getting an MRI, and I just remember them saying, do you want to listen to music? I said, sure. So I told them to put on my favorite album, and I was listening to it, but like I said, I'm a runner, so I knew exactly how long the songs were. Anyway, I was freaking out the entire time. My heart rate was probably 160, just laying there. And my resting heart rate is like 58, sub 60 most of the time. It's been 49 before, like legit. And so I was freaking out. I think this would maybe be 3 times worse. And so it's kind of fun that they kind of buried the lead here. They're like, aliens are more important than how freaked out Ryland would be. But anyway, goes to show you, it's not that important. Let's move on to important things. Ryland gets the cylinder back on the ship. He's excited about opening it. He undresses and he takes a whiff, and he says it smells like terrible in here. I wasn't gonna say the S word. It's terrible. And he says it's ammonia, which I thought was fascinating. I always remember the smell of ammonia, but I don't remember what it smells like. I remember that I know what it smells like, but I don't know what it smells like. Like, if I just smelled it, I would be like, oh right, that's ammonia. I guess it's coated. The cylinder's coated in ammonia or whatever. He says it's about the size of a coffee tin, and so he puts it back in the airlock. And and so he takes his gloves off and touches it, and he pulls his hands off because it was too hot to touch. I'm thinking that it's got astrophage in it, right? And it's emitting heat because of the astrophage. So I'm thinking that that's what's in it. Because if it's traveled for 45 minutes through space at the same rotation that Earth would be, it would be like minus 400 degrees Celsius out in space. And there's zero chance that would have stayed at 100 degrees Celsius. So I'm thinking there's some sort of astrophage connection here to what's inside this cylinder. Regardless, he leaves it in the airlock for a minute, but that's pretty interesting. And then while he waits for the temperature to drop down, he goes for the cylinder. He goes to the lab. He starts to look around. He realizes, hey, they did not build this lab for 0G. Right? There's got to be a reason. Like, everything else on this ship is so thoughtful. This seems pretty thoughtless. There must be a reason. I've got to remember it. And so he begins to try to remember it, and cut to black in chapter 7. Look, this book is really tough to put down. I assume we're gonna get a flashback chapter in this next one where we're gonna go into the training. There's a point in this chapter and a couple of the previous chapters he talks about his connection with the crew. I'm thinking there's some sort of like romantic relationship between he and the Russian woman, maybe, or he and Strat. I don't know. Because he's like that's genuine love. You know what I'm talking about? Like, he's feeling all of his emotions. And then there are emotions that we haven't seen him exhibit yet. Obviously, it's early in the book. But we need to get to a point where that's coming to a head. We've got the aliens in the ship outside. We've got the cylinder, which I believe has astrophage in it. That's why it's emitting so much heat. And then we've also got his memories that are coming back. Very super interested. It's gonna be good. I think I'm gonna jump right into chapter 8 like right now, and see if I can't get it out a little sooner, but probably not because my schedule's crazy. Look, but I think that's all I got for you. So if you like this content, please like and subscribe and share. If you want to follow along, I've got a link to the book on Amazon. You can just go down and buy it. I think this was like 12, 13 bucks. And the audiobook apparently is awesome. So I'm reading this, and I'm literally stopping after every chapter to record a video, and then I go back to reading. Sometimes I change shirts just for you people. So yeah. Anywho, if you like it, please like, share, subscribe, check out the book, and that's all. So until next time, later, taters.